The 1970s killed the muscle car, or at least, that's what everyone says. But the truth is messier and more embarrassing than that, because before emissions regulations and insurance companies finished the job, Detroit spent an entire decade accidentally helping them do it. Some of these cars were rushed, underpowered, overpriced, or just plain confused about what they were supposed to be. A few were so bad they became cautionary tales taught in engineering schools. Today we're counting down 12 muscle cars the 1970s produced that nobody brags about owning, and for very good reason. Number 12, the 1973 Pontiac Firebird Espri. Here's a sentence nobody in 1973 wanted to hear. Honey, I bought a Firebird, the soft one, because that's essentially what the Espri was. Pontiac took one of the most exciting nameplates in American performance history and built a version specifically designed to be inoffensive, to be comfortable, to be, and there's no gentle way to say this, boring. The Firebird Espri was conceived as the luxury trim of the Firebird lineup, positioned above the base model, but below the Formula and the Trans Am. On paper, that sounds reasonable. In reality, it created a car with an identity problem so severe, it needed therapy. The standard engine was a 250 cubic inch inline six, producing a deeply uninspiring 110 horsepower. 110. You could get more excitement pushing a shopping cart downhill. The optional V8s helped slightly, but Pontiac had already begun strangling their engines with emissions equipment by 1973, and the power numbers reflected that brutal reality. The 350 cubic inch V8 made 175 horsepower. That's the same number your grandmother quotes when she's bragging about her riding lawnmower. What made the Espri particularly painful was the packaging. Pontiac wrapped this disappointment in genuine luxury touches. Wood grain interior trim, extra sound insulation, a plusher ride tune specifically to isolate you from any feeling of actually driving. They took a performance car platform and deliberately engineered the performance out of it. The suspension was softened, the steering was vague, the exhaust note was whisper quiet. The Firebird name deserved better. The Trans Am that shared its body was one of the genuinely great performance cars of the decade. But the Espri was proof that slapping a Firebird badge on something doesn't automatically make it exciting. It just makes the disappointment arrive faster. Number 11, the 1974 AMC Javelin AMX. American Motors Corporation never had the budget of General Motors or Ford. Everyone knew that. Enthusiasts respected them for trying anyway. And in the late 1960s, the Javelin AMX was actually a legitimate muscle car. Twin hood scoops, big block engines, aggressive styling. It was a scrappy underdog that could genuinely embarrass more expensive machinery. Then came 1974, and the last Javelin AMX rolled off the line as something that would have made the 1969 version weep into its carburetor. By 74, AMC was fighting a war on every front simultaneously. Emissions regulations had gutted the engine lineup. Insurance costs had scared away performance buyers. The energy crisis had made big engines a public relations nightmare. And AMC, with fewer resources than anyone else, had the least ability to fight back. The result was a Javelin AMX that wore the AMX badge, which had originally stood for American Motors Experimental, while delivering performance that felt more like American Motors Exhausted. The base engine was a 360 cubic inch V8, producing 150 horsepower net. Net ratings had replaced the old gross ratings by this point, and while that explains some of the drop, it doesn't explain all of it. This engine was genuinely measurably slower than what AMC had offered just 4 years earlier. Quarter-mile times had ballooned past 16 seconds for most configurations. 16 seconds. Rental cars were posting competitive times. What really stings about the 74 Javelin AMX is that it was the last one. AMC canceled the Javelin after this model year, which means the nameplate went out not with a roar, but with an apologetic cough. A legend that started so promisingly ended in the worst possible way. Whimpering across a finish line, nobody was watching. Number 10. The 1975 Dodge Coronet Brougham. The word Brougham should have been a warning. In 1970s automotive language, Brougham was code for, "We've given up on performance and replaced it with velour." Chrysler understood this language fluently, and the 1975 Dodge Coronet Brougham was practically a masterclass in saying it. Now, to be fair, and we will be briefly fair before returning to our regularly scheduled criticism, the Coronet had been a legitimate performance platform. In the late 1960s, you could order a Coronet RT with a 440 Magnum or a 426 Hemi. These were serious machines that serious people drove seriously fast. The Coronet name carried real muscle car credentials. By 1975, those credentials had been cashed in completely. The Coronet Brougham was a mid-size family car wearing a performance nameplate like a costume that no longer fit. The standard engine was a 318 cubic inch V8, producing 150 horsepower. That engine was shared with Dodge trucks, taxi cabs, and police fleet vehicles, none of which are typically celebrated for their quarter-mile times. The Brougham package piled on every soft luxury touch Chrysler could think of. Thick carpet, padded vinyl roof, opera windows, interior wood grain trim, seats so cushioned they practically absorbed the driver. From the outside, it looked like someone had convinced a bank manager to buy a muscle car and then immediately talked him out of actually driving it like one. Chrysler discontinued the Coronet after 1976, but the Brougham trim represents the low point of the nameplate's dignity, a muscle car legacy buried under velvet and quiet desperation. Somewhere, a 446-pack was crying. Number 9. The 1976 Ford Mustang II Cobra II. Oh, the Mustang II. Few automotive decisions in American history have generated more collective groaning than the Mustang II. And the Cobra II package represents peak 1976 delusion, because Ford looked at a subcompact economy car based on the Pinto platform, added racing stripes, a fake hood scoop, and side graphics that screamed Cobra, and then apparently expected nobody to notice that the performance had been left completely out of the equation. Let's establish some context. The original Mustang was born in 1964 as an affordable performance car that changed American automotive culture forever. By 1976, the Mustang II Cobra II was available with a 2.8-liter V6 producing 105 horsepower. 105 horsepower. The racing stripes alone probably weigh more than the performance improvement they suggested. The top engine option was a 5.0-liter V8. And yes, that sounds promising until you learn it produced 139 horsepower with a 0 to 60 time somewhere in the 9-second range. 9 seconds to 60 miles per hour. A reasonably motivated bicycle rider might give you a race off the line. What makes the Cobra II particularly offensive isn't the performance deficit in isolation. It's the theatrical deception surrounding it. Ford plastered this car with every visual performance cue they could find. Stripes, scoops, spoilers, graphics packages. They understood that the car couldn't perform like a muscle car, so they decided it should at least look like it was performing while standing perfectly still. It was automotive theater from a company that had forgotten how to put on an actual show. The Mustang II Cobra II is a car that understood assignment aesthetics and completely failed assignment performance. It wore the most famous muscle car name in America like a borrowed suit 3 sizes too big. Carroll Shelby reportedly had strong feelings about it. We'll leave those unrepeated. Number 8. The 1971 Buick Skylark GS 350. In 1970, Buick built the GSX Stage 1, a car so shockingly fast, it embarrassed Chevrolets, Pontiacs, and Hemis at traffic lights across America. 510 pound-feet of torque in a luxury Buick. The automotive world hadn't seen anything quite like it. Then came the Skylark GS 350. And if the GSX Stage 1 was Buick's declaration of war, the GS 350 was Buick's unconditional surrender. The 350 cubic inch V8 in the 1971 GS produced 245 horsepower, which wasn't catastrophic by the standards of the time, but was deeply anticlimactic for a car wearing the Grand Sport badge. That badge implied something. It implied that this car had ambitions beyond getting you to the hardware store and back with your dignity intact. The real problem was positioning. Buick offered the GS 455 at the same time, which was a genuine performance machine with the big block muscle the GS name deserved. The 350 existed for buyers who wanted the GS appearance package but didn't want to pay for real performance. And that is perhaps the most embarrassing reason for a car to exist. It was a costume party for people who didn't actually want to dance. By 1972, the GS 350 had been further neutered by tightening emissions equipment, and the horsepower numbers dropped again. The car became a cautionary tale about what happens when a performance badge becomes a marketing tool rather than a promise. Buick had proved they could build a monster. The GS 350 proved they were equally comfortable building something considerably less impressive. Number 7. The 1973 Chevrolet Chevelle Malibu SS. The SS badge on a Chevelle once meant something. In 1970, the Chevelle SS with the LS 6454 under the hood was the most powerful production car Chevrolet had ever built. 450 horsepower, 500 pound-feet of torque, quarter-mile times in the low 13s. It was a machine that made grown men nervous and insurance actuaries weep. By 1973, that same SS badge had been placed on the Malibu, and we need to talk about what that meant. The 1973 Chevelle Malibu SS was, at its base configuration, a mid-size family coupe with a two-barrel 350 cubic inch V8 producing 145 horsepower. 145. That is not a muscle car engine. That is an engine that apologizes for itself. The best available engine option was a 454 cubic inch V8, but even that had been strangled to 175 net horsepower by 1973, a figure that would have embarrassed the 1970 version into the nearest ravine. The Malibu SS package itself was largely cosmetic. You got SS badging, a black grille treatment, some stripe options, and a slightly firmer suspension. What you didn't get was the sense that anyone at Chevrolet had recently driven a 1970 LS6 and thought about what they were walking away from. Quarter-mile times for the standard Malibu SS configuration were hovering around 16 seconds by 1973. This is a car that wore the badge of one of the greatest muscle machines ever built and couldn't pull away from a moderately enthusiastic Toyota. The SS nameplate survived. The soul behind it had been discontinued 2 years earlier. Number 6. The 1974 Plymouth Roadrunner. The Roadrunner started as one of the greatest ideas in muscle car history. Plymouth in 1968 looked at the expensive, over-equipped muscle cars of the era and asked a simple question. What if we stripped everything unnecessary away and just gave people a lightweight body with a massive engine at the lowest possible price? The formula worked spectacularly. The cartoon bird horn, the beep, beep, the legendary value proposition. By 1969, you could order a Hemi Roadrunner for under $4,000 and embarrass Corvettes at traffic lights. Fast forward to 1974, and someone needs to explain what happened. Because the 1974 Roadrunner had become something the original designers would not have recognized without a lengthy introduction and a strong drink. By 74, Plymouth had attached the Roadrunner name to a mid-level option package on the satellite body, which already wasn't a particularly exciting starting point. The available engines had been reduced to a two-barrel, 360 cubic inch V8, producing an official 150 horsepower, or a 400 cubic inch V8 making 200 horsepower. 200 horsepower in a Roadrunner. The original Hemi Roadrunner made 425. The weight had climbed, the performance had cratered. The cartoon bird graphics remained, which somehow made everything worse, because the beep-beep horn now felt less like a battle cry and more like a taunt from the car's own better history. Plymouth was essentially selling nostalgia, wrapped around mediocrity and hoping buyers wouldn't do the math. They eventually did. The Roadrunner nameplate limped through the rest of the decade before being quietly retired, a legend reduced to a badge on a car that couldn't outrun its own reputation. Plymouth had taken one of the greatest value propositions in muscle car history and systematically dismantled every single element that made it great. The cartoon bird deserved better. We all deserve better. Number 5. The 1977 Pontiac Can-Am. The Pontiac Can-Am. We need a moment with this one. Pontiac named a car after one of the most prestigious and brutal road racing series in motorsport history. The Canadian-American Challenge Cup was a no-holds-barred racing series that produced some of the fastest, most technologically advanced racing cars ever built. McLarens, Porsches, machines with over 1,000 horsepower. The Can-Am series was genuinely terrifying motorsport. The 1977 Pontiac Can-Am was a Le Mans coupe with a special paint scheme. That's it. That's the joke. You can sit with that for a moment. The Can-Am was built on the Le Mans platform, which was already a fairly unremarkable midsize Pontiac, and given a white and gold paint scheme, some special decals, and a raised hood scoop that was partially functional. The standard engine was a 400 cubic inch V8, producing 180 horsepower. The optional engine was a 400 cubic inch V8 in a slightly different state of tune, producing 200 horsepower, 20 additional horsepower for the privilege of the better engine. Racing series fans worldwide felt something, though we're not entirely sure what. What makes the Can-Am particularly remarkable is the audacity of the naming choice. Pontiac didn't call it the Le Mans Sport Coupe or the Grand Prix Special Edition. They reached into the trophy cabinet of genuine motorsport greatness and borrowed the most intimidating name they could find, and then attached it to a car with a 0 to 60 time of approximately 9 seconds. To be fair, the Can-Am looked reasonably aggressive. The hood scoop had genuine function. The paint scheme was distinctive. But when the name on your car evokes Denny Hume and Bruce McLaren doing 200 miles per hour through Mosport, and your actual car struggles through an on-ramp, you've created a credibility problem that no decal package can solve. Only 11,480 Can-Ams were built in its single production year. Pontiac quietly dropped it after 1977, perhaps hoping nobody would ask too many questions. Number 4. The 1972 Dodge Charger Rallye. The Dodge Charger in 1968 and 69 was one of the most visually spectacular muscle cars ever designed. That fastback roofline, the tunnel rear window, the hidden headlights, the Coke bottle body lines. It looked like something from a science fiction film and performed like it belonged in one. And then, it became even more famous from a certain 1968 Steve McQueen film that we're sure you've heard of. By 1972, Dodge had made a decision that still causes discomfort among Charger enthusiasts. They redesigned the Charger into a larger, softer, more luxurious vehicle, and then created the Rallye package as the performance option within this new direction. In theory, the Rallye should have preserved some of the Charger's performance identity. In practice, it became a chrome-laden, carpet-heavy cruiser that happened to have a sporty badge on the door. The base Rallye engine was a 318 cubic inch V8, producing 150 net horsepower. The optional 440 cubic inch big block remained available, but emissions equipment had pulled its teeth. 178 horsepower from a 440 was a number that would have caused physical pain to the engineers who built the original version, producing 375. The new Charger body was longer and wider than its predecessor, adding weight without adding purpose. Dodge had targeted a more upscale buyer with the redesign, someone who wanted the Charger's style and reputation without the performance car's compromises. They achieved that goal completely. The 1972 Charger Rallye was genuinely comfortable. The seats were better, the interior was quieter, the ride was smoother. None of those are sentences that mean anything at a stoplight when the car next to you belongs to 1968. Number 3. The 1978 Chevrolet Camaro Z28 reintroduction. Now, before the letters start arriving, stay with us here, because this entry requires some careful historical context. The Camaro Z28 had been discontinued after 1974, 4 years of absence. And when Chevrolet brought it back for 1977, enthusiasts who remembered the original Z28, the race-bred, solid-lifter, SCCA Trans Am weapon from 1967, greeted its return with genuine excitement. The Z28 was back. The legend had returned, What returned was a 350 cubic inch small block V8 producing 170 horsepower in 1977 and 185 in the revised 1978 configuration. That's it. 185 horsepower in a car wearing the badge of a machine that had once motivated buyers to race Corvettes on road courses and win. The 1978 Z28 had a specific problem beyond the power deficit, and that problem was honesty, or the lack of it. Chevrolet marketed this car aggressively on the heritage of the original Z28. The graphics packages were bold. The advertising was performance-focused. The imagery evoked racing, speed, and capability that the 1978 version simply could not deliver in any measurable way. A 1978 Z28 could run the quarter mile in approximately 16 seconds. The original 1967 Z28 ran the quarter mile in the low 14s. That gap, that 2 full second gap, represented a performance regression so dramatic it bordered on a different category of vehicle entirely. To be absolutely clear, later Z28 models, particularly the 1982 reintroduction with the Crossfire injection, and especially the 1985 TPI version, began to rebuild the nameplate's credibility. The story has a better ending, but the 1978 version represents the Z28 name stretched furthest from what it had originally promised. A badge earning interest on a reputation it was no longer backing with equivalent performance. Number 2, the 1971 Ford Mustang Mach 1 with the 302. The Mach 1 nameplate had arrived in 1969 as Ford's performance flagship Mustang. Big block options, aggressive styling, shaker hood scoops. It was the Mustang for people who took the word performance literally and personally. In 1969, a Mach 1 with the 428 Cobra jet was a genuine quarter-mile weapon capable of low 14s with a competent driver and adequate tires. The name meant something real. The 1971 Mach 1 with the base 302 cubic inch V8 was an entirely different conversation. Ford had completely restyled the Mustang for 1971, making it significantly larger, longer, and heavier than the previous generation. The new body was genuinely dramatic. Lower, wider, more aggressive in its proportions. It looked like it meant business. Unfortunately, when you ordered the base 302 engine, the business it meant was apparently filing. The 302 produced 210 gross horsepower, which sounds acceptable until you factor in the significant weight gain of the new body and realize the performance numbers reflected that equation painfully. 0 to 60 in the 302 Mach 1 took somewhere between 8 and 9 seconds depending on the specific configuration. Quarter mile times ran into the high 15s. For a car called Mach 1, a name borrowed from aviation, specifically the speed of sound, producing high 15 quarter-mile times was a naming decision that required some explanation. Ford did offer genuinely powerful engine options in the 71 Mach 1. The 429 Cobra jet remained available, and those cars were real performers. But the presence of the 302 as the base engine, an engine entirely unsuited to the Mach 1's performance promises, meant that showroom floors across America were full of Mach 1 Mustangs that could look the part but couldn't fulfill it. Many buyers chose the base engine for its lower price without understanding what they were walking away from. The Mach 1 name deserved better specifications at every trim level. Calling something Mach 1 and letting it leave the factory in low performance configuration wasn't just a product mistake. It was a promise made and immediately broken on the drive home from the dealership. Number 1, the 1974 Pontiac GTO. This is the one. If you had to point to a single moment when the muscle car era didn't just decline, but actively, publicly humiliated itself, this is that moment. Understand what the GTO represented before we discuss what it became. John DeLorean and his team at Pontiac invented the muscle car concept in 1964. They took a mid-size car, stuffed in a 389 cubic inch V8, priced it accessibly, and accidentally started an entire automotive revolution. The GTO was the genesis. Every muscle car that followed, every Chevelle SS, every Roadrunner, every Charger, existed because of what Pontiac created with the GTO in 1964. The GTO was the father of the entire genre. The 1974 Pontiac GTO was a rebadged Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme Colonnade Coupe with a 2-barrel 170 cubic inch engine option. A 2-barrel 170 cubic inch engine in a GTO. The same name that once wore a 400 Ram Air 4 capable of high 12-second quarter miles, now covered an engine that produced 100 horsepower. 100. You could, and this is not a metaphor, find more power in some contemporary riding lawnmowers with delusions of grandeur. We're being slightly dramatic, but the point stands. Pontiac had been pushed by General Motors to reduce costs, and the decision was made to source the GTO body from Oldsmobile rather than develop a standalone platform. The result was a car that wasn't really a Pontiac in any meaningful sense, wasn't really a performance car in any historical sense, and wasn't really deserving of the GTO name in any honest sense. What made this worse than any other entry on this list is the specific weight of the name being destroyed. You could forgive a lesser nameplate being assigned mediocre specifications. Lots of nameplates deserved mediocrity and received it without anyone much noticing. But the GTO wasn't a lesser nameplate. It was the founding document of an entire American automotive philosophy. Attaching it to an underpowered, rebadged Oldsmobile coupe was the automotive equivalent of renaming your public library after Einstein and then removing all the books. Pontiac sold just 6,966 GTOs in 1974, down from 32,000 in 1973 and a lifetime high of 96,476 in 1966. The buying public, to their enormous credit, recognized immediately what had happened and responded accordingly. They simply stopped buying it. The GTO was discontinued after 1974. The nameplate that invented the muscle car was killed not by regulations or insurance companies or the energy crisis, though all of those had done their damage, but ultimately by Pontiac's own decision to betray everything the name had originally promised. The muscle car era deserved a better ending than this. The GTO deserved a better ending than this. And if you ever want to understand why enthusiasts of a certain generation get a particular look in their eyes when 1974 comes up in conversation, this is why. This is exactly why.